So welcome. Tonight is our last session on the pleated log cabin. And then, of course, I want to see everyone's finished products on the wall. Let's recap where we've been, what we've done. So, and I'm going to have tonight, I'm going to have some tips for you on how to make this maybe just a little bit simpler. I'm going to recap the verbal instructions, and I know a lot of you guys want written instructions. So I've got to work on that too tonight and get that up. So first, what did we do? We laid out a bunch of fabrics with the centers and then the different colorways. All right. You should take a 10-inch square and cut it X. Draw an X. So you're going to start with a 10-inch square and draw an X. And this is scrap fabric. It doesn't have to be white. It can be anything you want it to be. But you're going to go ahead and do that X. The next thing we did was we took our fabric here. Okay, depending on what colorway you're doing. So you're going to take your fabric. You've got all your centers that came in your kit or you bought. You're going to take this and you're going to press on the back of this some shape flex interface. So that's the soft shape flex. It's very flexible. So you're going to press that on the back of this. And then after you do that, you're going to cut out your squares. So now you've got your squares, and on the back, it has this shape flex. Okay? From there, what we did that was a little different was we put batting on the back of our centers. I'll pick a bright one. So we put batting on the back of this center, and we sewed it together. So we attached it in the center of this. This is a 4-inch square. So we altered our strips. So when we went to make our strips, okay, instead of being 4.5 per the instructions, we went down to 4 inches because this is 4-inch center, not a 4.5-inch center. So we adjusted. Just get a copy of that pattern. Okay, I'll grab my pattern. Get a copy of your pattern. Cross out everywhere. This is 4.5, 5.5, etc. for each round, and take a 1/2 inch off each one of those. And then it has 6 rounds. We're only doing 4 rounds. If you really want to get creative, you could do 5 rounds. But for my layouts, I did 4. And then from there, we started sewing. Now, I will tell you that the first class and the first webinar on the wall, I showed you how to properly pin per the instructions. And that was taking pins, and it said towards the center, and that was a little confusing. I got a lot of people ask me about that because they thought that pinning it toward the center meant towards the center, but it actually means towards the center from the outer edge. So it talks about pinning each side of this frame. Now, I will tell you that as I started to sew this quilt together, pinning was getting on my nerves majorly. So I ended up doing something much more simple. I've got a picture of this that I'll send you, but I didn't pin as I sewed. I sewed the 2 frames down, and then, so you're supposed to take this, and you're supposed to take the wrong side up per the instructions. So you're going to have the wrong side up. You're going to sew it and flip it over. And then you're supposed to pin it. I didn't do that. As I started to do these blocks, I sewed it wrong side down, flipped it over, and I sewed the top down. It was so much easier for me. I wanted to go pretty fast, and I didn't want to stop and pin. So I think that's an easier step. Don't pin, just take the time to sew. Sew a stitch to sew it, face down, flip it over, and just stitch it down. You're done. It's really that easy. So I got a lot of beginners asking me some questions about these frames. And I found some really cool tricks that I want to share with you tonight that I haven't shared before. Okay, and I'm going to come around to the camera and I'm going to show you the center of this block in just a second. It is super duper adorable, really, really adorable. What I did was I took my block, and before I sewed any of the squares on it, I had the batting on it. I took this and I just took my domestic machine and I sewed down on each side of the sun rays, the sunburst, so the burst rays that come out of here. I sewed an orange on these orange stripes, and then I sewed around the flower, and wow, it is stunning. I'm going to show that to you real quick, and then I'm going to tell you how I open this center up on my first frame. So let me come around and show that to you. I don't know if you guys can see that. Can you see how that pops? Look at that. I mean, just to touch it is so cool. It's got that little indentation, and it really makes it pop quite a lot. Isn't that cool? Oh, let me show you the back. So here's a picture of the back. See the back? Okay. So I went and I sewed down these sunbursts, but I didn't do it on all of them. I did it on some of them. Remember, this is a scrappy quilt, so there's no wrong way to do your scrappy quilts, okay? This is a pleated log cabin scrappy quilt. So that's one thing I did, was I played with it a little and I tested the waters, and I got some questions about how could they open the center up more. So here's the important thing to know about doing your blocks. All the blocks, this looks really great together. These are not the same size, but it's cool because it's scrappy, right? The imperfection is perfect on this quilt. And it's not about the first round and where it measures out. What's important is the measurement of each one of these folds or the pleats. You want those to be somewhat similar. I actually did this one exactly per the instructions. I did this block a little differently. In this block, I did it at 1 1/4 inch. Then I moved it out to 1 1/2 inches on my pleats. And by the time I got to my last frame here, okay, I had it consistent at 1 1/2. So you can adjust yours however you want to do that. You can do it at 1 1/2, or you could, and when I'm sorry, not 1 1/2. Let me explain. I took my folded corner clipper tool, and this first frame, okay, so we're going to back up. All right. When opening up this quilt, the first round that I did at the strip was 2 inches. I folded it over, so it was 1 1/2 fold, but the strip itself was only 2 inches, not 2 1/2. And then that helped me get a bigger gap in here. But each one of these pleats from that point on, okay, each one of these pleats, when I pleated the fabric, I stopped to make sure, I'm going to show this to you. I'm going to go up to the camera and show this to you. I used my folded corner clipper tool, and I made sure that the pleat was at 1/2 inch, except for the first frame, which is 1 1/4. So it progressed a little larger as it went, and it has a very super cool effect. So let me show that to you with the ruler. So if I take the ruler, and I'm going to use the measurement from 1 inch to 1 1/2, because I think it pops a little more on this fabric. So can you see those numbers right there? So as I line this up, this is the 1 1/2 inch, and that's the 1 inch. And look how it is over the pink. That helps me line up that that's exactly 1/2 inch. And then here, that green is 1/2 inch. But if I go to the purple and I put that one there, that one right on the pleat, you see it's more of 1 1/4. See that line? So that means I didn't do every pleat at 1/2 inch. That's the clearance of what you see. I did the first one at almost 1/2 inch, like 3/4 inch. And then this one, the top of the pink was at 1 inch and the top of the green was at 1 1/2. So that means it was 1/2 inch showing. So this was a little less than 1/2 inch, the purple, and then it was 1/2 inch on the pink and 1/2 inch on the green. And then I folded this over completely to the pattern at 1 1/2. So what I'm telling you is, no matter what your scraps are, no matter if your scraps are square, if you have a remnant, it doesn't matter. So long as you sew this down, you fold it over, and you make sure that this fold is consistent in between each layer, the rest of it doesn't matter until you get to the outer layer. That's the wonderful thing about this. There's a lot of forgiveness in this quilt. So I'll show you the back to this. So here's the back of my panel. Now, here's the interesting thing. You can tell that there's 2 lines here on this right here. There's 2 lines right there. There's 2 lines out here. And that's because I did a stitch as you go. So what I did was I took this fabric and I laid it down and I put the wrong side down per the instructions. I folded it over and I did not pin it, I sewed it. I just went ahead and did a little base stitch and stitched that down. That way I didn't have to deal with all the pins, okay? So that's a much easier way to do this, super cute. Now, after you get this done, what I intend to do is on the bigger starbursts that are open, I'm going to quilt the starburst. On the flowers that I don't have the starburst done, I'm going to quilt the flower only, which would be super cute. Let's talk about how we put these blocks together. This, you can do it per the instructions, and if you do it per the instructions, you might want to do 1 more frame, so you have 5. Mine, I'm doing 4 frames, and I did a picture for you on my phone that I'm going to upload, but I have my 8 1/2 inch ruler. Let me put this. So I have my 8 1/2 inch ruler, and I make sure that when I get done putting my block together, that it's at 8 1/2 or 9 inches. You just have to be consistent. If you're going to do it at 8 1/2 inches, make sure everything's at 8 1/2. It all depends on what size folds you want to have in here. So because I did my first round, I cut a 2-inch strip. It was not a 2 1/2. It was a 2-inch strip. I folded it over, and then that opened this up a lot because it gave me a 1/2 inch on each side. It gave me a 1/2 inch more to show, right? But then from there, I measured, and I did each pleat from there at the same exact distance. So each pleat looks consistent, and boom, looks wonderful. I ended up with an 8 1/2, 9 inch frame. It's a little more than 8 1/2 inches, a little less than 9. So I have 2 blocks, block 1 and block 2. What I did was I French seamed them together. If you don't know what a French seam is, I'm going to teach that to you in just a second. And then on the back, it comes together with this cute little French seam, and I decided to stitch it down towards the blue. You can just be consistent with how you want to do this. So you're going to have all these blocks. I would suggest you get your blocks done first, and you lay them out on your table. So you got all your blocks sewn, and then you have to figure out and lay on your board, how do you want your backing to look? Now, in this example, in this block example, I use spot. In my real quilt, I'm going to use the milfory. I love this. So this is what I'm going to be doing. I don't think this is milfory. I think this is, I don't know right now. My brain has gone dead. Hold on, I'm going to answer my own question. Oh my goodness. I am having a webinar block, mental block. And I know some of you guys are laughing because you're yelling the answer at the computer screen. The guinea flower. Guinea flower. Oh my gosh. Okay, starting over. The guinea flower is what I'm going to be using on the back of my quilt. And I'm going to alternate the blues, the dark blue, and the orange, and the yellow, and then the guinea flower that comes in the summer sew-along. So I'm going to alternate those, and that's what's going to go in the back of my personal quilt. But for tonight, just to make it pop, I did the spot. So how do you do a French seam, and how do you do these blocks? So if you don't pin and you decide to sew all the way around, which is fine, you are going to want to pin the top fold. So how I sewed this together, just so you know, is that, you know, each frame that you do, you have an inner frame and then you have an outer frame as you sew the inner frames and then the outer frames, and the inner frames and then the outer frames. Your last set of outer frames here need to fold differently than the block next to it. It will really look spectacular if it alternates. All right, so in this example, my folds go inward this way, and in this example, my fold on my outer one is perpendicular and it goes this way. Okay, so I've got my blocks lined up, I've got my backings lined up, and now what I need to do is create sets. So you'll take, here's the backing, right? And we're going to pretend that those are my sewn blocks on the inner side. So you're going to take a backing and a backing, and you're going to put them face side together, right side together. And on the outside are going to be your sewn blocks. You can see the X here because this should be your sewn block. Okay? So you've got your sewn blocks with wrong sides together for the backing, and then your other block, wrong side together, the backing, okay? And you're stacking this, so this is a stack. So you've got your pretty pleated, your two spots, right side together, with the wrong side facing the front, right? So it's outer, wrong side together, spots, right sides together, wrong sides together, and then the other pretty pleated thing. You're going to take this and you're going to sew on the right side of the quilt. You're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam. Then you're going to take it and you're going to press it, pull it apart like this and press that down open. Then you fold this and you repress this away. So now you're looking at the back of the quilt, and the back of the quilt has the two fronts right side together in there and the outer side here. And now you come back and you give me another 1/4 inch seam, or even a 3/4 inch seam, just to make sure everything inside, even if you press it really well, you'll be good. But if you want, you need to go a little bigger than that, maybe a 3/4 inch seam down this side. Then what you want to do at that point is open it up and check it and make sure that you caught the inside, right? So I had this together like this. So I had the backing, the two right sides of my blocks, and the other backing, and I brought that seam all the way through, and I sewed a 3/4 inch seam. And then I took it and I folded it down. One more time, I took it. You have to make a decision which way you want it to fold. I want it to fold over the pink side a little here, and when I get done, it's going to fold back over the blue. So I sewed this back down another 1/4 inch. I check it on the inside, and it caught my block just right, just perfectly. This is the only thing that I pinned, was this one fold that was loose. This one loose fold. I pinned, that's the only pinning I did when I alternated the pattern. Okay, I pinned it so it would be out of the way when I sewed the French seam down on the other side. Keep it pinned. So now you've got this nice and neat block sewn together, and you quilted this backing as you went along, and now you've got this cute little French seam that you can sew down. You don't have to sew it again, because when you come to sew the other blocks together, this will catch it and hold it down. And it'll be a cute little pleat on the other side framing your square. At this point, you get to decide. You get to decide, I don't know that I'm going to do this, but at this point, you can stop and you could quilt in this flower. And if you decide to quilt in these flowers, you're going to have a cute little flower quilted in the center of these blocks. Isn't that cute? And that's how you quilt as you go. Now, I will tell you, this is a pretty heavy quilt. Not too heavy, but it's kind of got its own batting in there. Should you want to do this and do batting in between each block, you can do that. So what I would recommend you do is when you're sewing these together, and this is going to be more intermediate because it's going to be thicker to do this. It's up to you. But you need to have a 10-inch batting in here because you've got to catch all the edges. All right? So you're going to have a 10-inch batting. This is not 10 inches, but we're going to pretend that it is. Okay? You just want one layer. One layer in here, and that's going to go between your front and your back the first time. So you're going to put it in between here and in between here. And remember, you're going to have a block. You're going to have your block, your batting, your backing. Your two backings are right side together. So your batting will be in there. So that would be 6 layers. And then you'll French seam it. You'll sew so a French seam is a hidden seam. You always sew it right sides out, okay? You take that and then you press it and it comes back in and you stitch it again and that becomes a hidden seam. It's super cool. We did it in the pillow sham, and if you'd like, I'll get that for you and show that to you. All right, let me get that for you. All right, so here's the pillow sham that we did. And isn't that cute? Cute pillow sham. All right. And look, this is an adorable French seam right here. And look, you can't see any threads or any seams other than the final stitch. And that's because we started with sewing it right sides out. So that's the correct side out. You sew it, you push it through, you press it, and then you stitch it again, and that seam is hidden in there. It gives it a nice little French seam. Same thing that we're going to do on this quilt, except we're going to take this and we're going to sew that down. All righty. So that is how we quilt as we go. Cute, huh? All right, so now we're going to stop. I've gone a little long tonight, but I wanted to kill a little time in the beginning and show you guys my new studio. Per the request on the wall, thank you so much for that interest. And now we're done with this pleated log cabin. So please complete your quilt, put up your blocks, ask us questions on the Sew Along with Georgie Girl wall, share your work. We love to do this together. We love to see everyone's work. And right now we're going to go to the fun part of our webinar and do Q&A.